Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we'll start the Succah daf Mem Beis. We are going to begin on the very bottom of Mem Aleph of Beis, the very last line. Rabbi Yossi Omer Yom Tov. So this is quoting the end of the Mishnah that says if it's the first day of Sukkot and it falls out on Shabbos, the person forgot, and he was actually carrying the lulav and the Rosh Hashanah, which normally is an Isser D'Oraisa of Hotzah, the Mishnah says Pater. So in this Gemara says, Rabbi, as we continue Mem Beis and Aleph, Lo Shanu El Shul Yatza. The only time this person is going to be pater is because he didn't actually fulfill his obligation of Shik Lulav and Esrog. Of a Yatzabo Chayiv. If he already fulfilled his obligation, then in that situation he's going to be Chayiv. As Rashi says, of a Yatzabo Kodim Shaitziyah. If, let's say, you already fulfilled your obligation, sulo tabed bar mitzvahu, that does not fall into the category of making a mistake on a situation where you're about to do a mitzvah, v'lo torid, mahashma mitzvah sasoisa. Because in this situation, you're not torid because you already did the mitzvah, and therefore you're going to be chayv. So, for the Gemara, ha mida agvihi nafik bey. So this is the famous din that we're all familiar with regarding to Esrog. The question is, what do you mean? As long as you pick it up, you're going to be automatically Yotzi de Chavaso, just as long as you pick it up, and that's it. So, how could we ever find a situation where a person did not fulfill the obligation, and he's walking around in Rosh Hashanah with a Luv and Esrog? So, Rabbi, so he says, Kishahavchui. It's in a situation where it's turned around, which of course we know that's what we do. We hold the Esrog pitam down, so this way we could say the bracha over lasiyasan before we shake the Luv and Esrog. After we say the brach, we turn it around and then we shake. Because once it's turned and it's derech dilasan, the way it grows, at that point you've already fulfilled the mitzvah. So therefore, one answer is that you were carrying it with the pitam down, so you never fulfilled your obligation. Maybe you didn't turn it around. Really, it was up the proper way. So didn't you already fulfill the obligation? So the Mishnah says, the Gemara says, that you were carrying it in a vessel. So what's the problem with that? Even though it was a machlokas, but according to the sheet of Rabbi, and this is who's saying the statement, if you pick up something like we spoke about a kerchief, holding on to it, it's a lakicha in the that's shema lakicha. So since it's considered to be a lakicha, so how does this matter? You still do the mitzvah. Your answer is it depends. Hani mili derech kavod of derech bezayin lo. If you, let's say you pick it up derech bezayin, Rashi says kigoyin bekar on a plate. So it doesn't look like you're doing it for the sake of the mitzvah. You're just walking around like with like a food on a plate. So that's not a respectful way of holding the esrog. And therefore, if you were holding it derech bezayon, then you did not fulfill the mitzvah. Even according to the Shita, Lakicha di Deracher Shema Lakicha. Omer Rabhuna Omer Hoyer Rav Yosi Oilos Oaf. When it comes to the din of the ola offering of the bird, which is completely burned on the mizbeach, Shenimsas Bein Gafayim, and it was found Bein Gafayim, which means amongst other birds. So the question is, because it got commingled, you thought it was a chatas of, and of course a chatas of is something in which is consumed. Rashi says, how is it possible that this mistake could happen? So he says, Shipamim shehinasin al karanachas. It could possibly be by the same corner, as it's brought down in the Masechta Zvachim. Chatas of haisanasis al ken merabis doroimus. The chatas of was brought on the southwestern side. V'shloish devarim haisa oisa hakerim mishameshes milamata negimul amala. Milamata chatas of v'hagashus v'shir hadam. The chatas of was one of the three situations where it was above. Milamata from above down. So the truth is that they're in separate locations. Or Kashi Rabba, when there was so many of them, the Mizrach Shikr Makom oil sa'of v'keren d'reimus mizrachis. Even though it's true that oil sa'of was really supposed to be in the southeastern corner, but there's so many. Kashay kohanim rabim, oimdin, they're standing there, molkin oil sa'of, b'mizrach boim l'marav. They'll actually go to the west, but not to shom v'keren chatas oif, el she'oil l'mal m'chota sikra v'chatas l'mata. Of course, we know the difference is there's something on the mizbech, and the center, the middle of it rather, is what's called the chota sikra. And the question is, do you do this rika sadam above or below? When it comes to the ola sa'of, it was above the chota sikra, and the chata sa'of was below the chota sikra. So certainly the zrikas were different, but it's possible that they commingled. So, and you all of a sudden you ate this ola sa'of, thinking it was the chata sa'of. So the din is that you're potter, even though you're benefiting from something which is hektish. You would think you'd be chayiv a carbon me'ila. It says Rashi, you're potter. Hoyel te'im imachatas nimsis v'chilasa mitzvah. V'chsiv v'achol oisa ma'shachiper b'hem havile toya b'devar mitzvah potter. Since if there was a chatas oaf over there, so therefore you were told b'devar mitzvah, and therefore you're potter. So for the Gemara, my kamashmal and told b'devar mitzvah potter hainu hach. This case of consuming the olas oaf thing is a chatas oaf, that's also told b'devar mitzvah. It's the same thing as carrying the lulav and esrog out in the Rosh Hashanah. So manatema hasim who the told b'devar mitzvah potter hainu the oven mitzvah. Maybe when it comes to the lulav and esrog, at least you're doing the mitzvah afterwards. Over here, you're not doing the mitzvah because you ate it and you shouldn't have eaten. It was supposed to be completely burned in the mizbech. So maybe you would think in that situation we don't say tabed bar mitzvah potter. Or let's say a person sheks a carbon talmud, which is one of the karbanos that we require it to be examined for a period of time. Then let's say you shechted it and you didn't have it examined kihilchaso properly, b'Shabbos, and you did it on Shabbos chayiv chatas. So sarach tamid acher, you have to bring another carbon tamid. So the question is that being tamid bar mitzvah? So why are we being so strict over there? So our answers are malay bar mina. You can't ask when it comes to the tamid. This is a different situation. Dahi dahai marla merav shmuel bar chatoi amarav hamnuna saboy merav yitzchak bar oishin amarav huna merav kigon. Shahaviu malishka she'enu mivokrin. You brought it from a lishka that it was not checked. In other words, basically, as Rashi says, ein ze toya b'dvar mitzvah. What you didn't make a mistake doing a mitzvah. Why? Shebetaloyim shebelishka zu. When it came to these animals that were in this lishka, einu tarid she'enu oimdin l'hakrava. They are not fit to be able to be makriv these karbanos. Lios charad aleihen masa yikrabut. I start thinking, when should I bring them? V'av charadas zman hatamid lo shaycha hacha shekarav l'meizidhu v'loy dak b'lishka s'lahavchem ezi yavi. So again, this is if you took from a lishka that it was not shaykh to be able to bring a carbon over there from those animals because these were non-examined animals. So then that's not considered to be a tabed of our mitzvah. Look at question 3. Rabbi Yosef Yom Tov Rishon Shachach Shachayos V'Shachar V'Chaytzes L'Lulav V'Rishos Aram Potter. Ma din l'shitasai v'shaichet tami shenim avoker. Let's see how he writes it. So im hevi malishka shenim uvukarim chayiv chatas. If you brought it from a place where it was that whole lishka wasn't checked, the chayiv chatas. V'im tav v'lakach mebein ha'mebukarim. Potter. However, if you had taken it from the place in which they were checked, but again there was this mistake, you took an also oath thing, was a chatas oath, so then you are potter. Okay, let's see the next Mishnah. So mekabelas isha miyad b'na. So as we mentioned before, the issue that the esrog could be wet and it's possible it could be machshel kabotoma, as we saw before, quoting this Mishnah. So a woman could take the lulav of an esrog from her son, umiyad balan from her husband. Rashi says, "Moyam rinan kimetaltala midi doichazi." We don't say that she's being metaltal something which is not fit because she's an enamechoyev b'davar. doesn't matter. She's still allowed to take the lulav. She's even allowed to put it into water on Shabbos so that it doesn't dry up. That's not a problem. Says Rashi, B'Shabbos machzirin. Says, let's continue. Rabbi Yehuda B'Shabbos machzirin. Shahari mikan notlum hayoim, because they already took it from there, from on Shabbos. It was already there, and then it was just being put back. However, you're not allowed to add water. Koshkin shein machlifin hamayim. You can't change the waters. Lishboich es elu v'loses acherim sainin, and to put, let's say, other cold waters in its place. The tarach was skuni mana, because you're being matriach by fixing a kli, and that's not something which is allowed to be. It's not allowed to be done. That's not something which can be done. Okay, so let's see the rest of this Mishnah. Machzirasul mayim b'Shabbos. Rabbi Yehuda Omer b'Shabbos machzirin. On Shabbos you could again put it back because it was there originally. But Yom Tov moisifin. On Yom Tov we allow you to even add water to it, and b'moed, namely in Chol HaMoed, machlifin. You could even exchange and change the water from one to the next. Rashi actually says mitzvah hachlif. It's a mitzvah to do so. And then the Mishnah concludes, Katan Yilin Anech Lulav. If you have a child who knows how to shake the lulav, so he should do so. So Pshita, for the Gemara, what's the problem? Why would you think she can't touch it? So Madatema Hoyel V'Isha Bas Chayubahi, as I said, she's not obligated to shake the lulav and esrog. Emulat Kabel. Kamash Malan, you would think maybe she shouldn't be allowed to take the lulav either. So Kamash Malan, so what's the Kamash Malan? Says Rashi, Kibun Duroy Latatilas Anashim. Since it's fit for men to touch the lulav, Torah's kliyolav, umota batiltul lakoil, and therefore everyone's allowed to touch it. Katan yidei Torban, katan yidei lanei chayav lulav. Child knows how to shake the lulav, so that's why he should do it. Musatev chayav b'tzitzis. Once he knows how to wrap himself, he should wrap himself in tzitzis. Lishmor tefillin, if he knows how to protect his tefillin, aviv loikech lo tefillin, so his father should buy him tefillin. Of course, our minhag is we don't do it so young, because nowadays perhaps a person, it's more difficult, says Rashi, shul yechanis mehil beis hakisei, to bring them into the bathroom, or to be able to have a guf naki and machshavos toivos while a person is wearing the tefillin. Yodei ledaber, once a child knows how to speak, aviv loimdo Torah kriyishma, the father teaches them Torah and kriyishma. What's Torah? So Torah mahi. Let that be the first pasuk a child should learn. Kriya Shemahi, pasuk Rishon. They should say Shema Yisrael Shem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Once they know how to speak, you should teach them those two pasukim. The child knows how to guard his body. Says Rashi, Matumos Mago Masav oil, from becoming Tameh in these different ways. So Oichlin Al Gufo Taharos. You can eat through his body Taharos, says Rashi. Let's say the child touched Taharos with his body, in Chaysh, we're not concerned that maybe he was Tameh. However, his hands is a whole other matter. However, Lishmar is Yadav. If he even guards his hands, Oichlin al Yadav Taharos, you can even eat that which he touches with his hands. Hoydeli Shoyel, he knows how to answer. Bershus HaYachid Sveiko Tameh. Bershus HaRabim Sveiko Tahar. We know that this is the general rule, that when we learn from a sota, a woman who's a suffix, did she have tashmish from this man? So that is in a rishos hayachid. So we have this concept of suffix rishos hayachid sveiko tameh, and therefore we assume we make her a sota. Rishos harabim sveiko tahar. So it's all totally on his being able to ask and be able to speak. Says Rashi, if you ask him a question, Yodel Hoshiv, Hain, Olav, or any Yodea, he'll be able to tell you whether this thing is tummy or not. So if he is on that level, then it falls under this category, as I quoted again from Rashi, all the dinim from Masechtas Sota, toward the end of the Masechtas Daf Chavches. Once a child knows how to do Nesias Kapayim by lifting his hands properly as a Kohen, then Cholkin Lo Truma Veis HaGroinos, then we'll start giving truma to him from the Beis Hagronos, from the silo. Says Rashi, but before that time, ein cholkin lo begarin, we don't give it to him from the silo. He can get it from his house. If he's able to be able to protect himself and be clean. Skipping one more line, v'kulan mishargin mehen levatein beveis hagronos ein cholkin mehen shebezayin trumahu shein kol ro'u yoidim bo shehu baki l'shomer. Not everyone knows that he's an expert in this. Of lebeison in his house mishargin lehem habikim makirin behem kshuydei lifros kaplan paris betzibor. At this point, once he does the Nesis Kapayim, we allow him to do this even in public. Hakol yoidim shehevi shtei saros. He's obviously a gadol. She'ein katan paris kapov, because a katan is not allowed to do Nesis Kapayim, as brought down in Masechtas Megillah. Hilka cholkin lo. Therefore, at that stage, we will do so. Question 4. Madua in cholkin lo kohen katan truma beis hagronos umi amasei cholkin loy. So this is including the Rashi we just saw. So ein cholkin lo katan, we don't divide it for a katan. It's a bezayin. It's a bezayin for truma. She'ein kol royin yoidim bo shehu baki l'sharmer. Not everyone knows that he's an expert. Once he knows to do Nesis Kapayim, at that time we know that he's shown his shtei saros, which means that he's a gadol, and therefore we will be chaylik even beveis hagronos, which is in public. Continuing now on Mem Beis Amud Beis. Hayodea lishchait. If this child knows how to do shchita, and Rashi says amin yadav l'shchita, that he's able to have a steady hand. Afal pi she'enu baki b'hilcha shchita, even though he may not be a baki in all the dinim of shehiyah, hagrama, chalada, and ikr, and all the different dinim that pertain to shchita, but if you see that he seems to have a steady hand, oichin b'shchitasai. And Gemara in Masechtas Chulin talks about whether you have to be in front of him watching the shchita. Amar Huna, v'ushe gadol oimin al gabav, as is quoted again here, that a gadol has to be actually standing over him to make sure that it was done properly. As Rashi says, shloshav loy daras. He didn't press on the knife, and he didn't delay kadesh chitaso. He did it quickly. Yachol le'echol kazais dagan. If he's able to eat even a kazais of grain, then marchikin mesuasa mimiragul of arba amos. At that point, his waste matter, as feces, is considered to be significant enough that it smells and it produces a foul odor, that if you want to be able to say Kriya Shema and daven, you have to be distant from that. It has to be that he eats it during the normal time to be able to eat Kriya Achilas Pras. Rashi says Chatzi Kikar, half a loaf. Okay, which is the Chamim, as Rashi says, is the Mazun Shtei Sudos L'Erev. Okay, Viter. Even for an adult, even if he can't eat so fast, still we have to distance from his soa. Now once you get a little bit smarter, a little bit older, then all of a sudden things, greater levels of sorrow and pain fall toward you, which means again that we're more strict once you're a gadol as far as not being able to say the Kriya Shema or Tefillah near such so and meraglaim. Once a person can eat roasted meat, as a Pesach, then he could partake and be part of the Chabura for eating the Karban Pesach. As the pasuk says, Ish lafi achlo tichasu haroy lachil. You have to be someone who's fit to eat it to be able to be part of the Chabura. Rabbi Yehuda Omer ad shiachlu varachila. Has to be enough that he's able to separate in his food. What does that mean? Ketzad. If you give him a rock, he'll throw it away. You give him a nut, obviously not the shell, but something which is edible, he's going to take it. So therefore he has enough das to be able to separate between one thing and the next. That already is old enough that he can partake and participate in the Shchitas Karban Pesach as part of the Chabura. Hanulach Lulav HaGazel, Hanulach Lulav HaGazel, Hanulach Lulav HaGazel. We finished the third parak. Let's now continue with the fourth parak, Lulav V'Arava. So the Mishnah says, Lulav Rabbi Shish V'Shiva. Sometimes when it comes to the mitzvah of Lulav, sometimes it comes to the mitzvah of the Rabbi, Rashi says, which is in the Mikdash, sometimes it's for 7 days, and sometimes it's for 6 days. It's going to be depending, as Rashi says, Pamim Shedoichin Shabbos, Vehain Shel Shiva, Pamim Shein Doichin, V'Havilu Shisha Yamim. So we're going to explain, sometimes it's totally, when, if Doicha Shabbos is not Doicha Shabbos, will totally be 6 or 7. Halel V'Simcha Shmoina, to say Halel, which means all of Halel, in which typically we say all of Halel except on Rosh Chodesh, the last days of Pesach, for various reasons, but otherwise we say whole Halel, and it's done for all 8 days, including Shmini Atzeres. Simcha also is something which takes place. Regarding the carbon shlomim, in the time of the Beis HaMikdash, we know Ein Simcha El B'Basar. Joy only took place by the consumption of meat, as the pasuk Rashi quotes of Zavachta Shlomim V'Yochalta Sham V'Samachta. The Avagav the High Crow Lav Regolim Ksiv. Even though that pasuk is not really talking about Regolim, still we use that pasuk to tell us the dinim of Regolim. Fine. Now Sukkah V'Nisach Hamayim Shiva. Sitting in the Sukkah, as the pasuk says, Sukkah's Teisha Shiva Shamim, as well as Nisach Hamayim, the water libations that were done. That was something which was also for the period of 7 days. Hachalil Chamisha V'Shisha, the blowing of the Chalil, which was a trumpet. Rashi says the Simchas Beis HaShoeva, which we're going to see how fascinating what they used to do during these times of the Simchas Beis HaShoeva. So it was only for the period of either Chamisha V'Shisha, either 5 or 6 days, because as we're going to see, the Simchas Beis HaShoeva and all the musical instruments were not Doiche Yom Tov, and therefore sometimes only 5, sometimes it was 6, as we'll describe later. So Lulav Shiva Ketzad. So let's go through the first part of the Mishnah. How is it possible the Lulav could actually be for 7 days? So Yom Tov Rishon Shulchan Shachlios B'Shabbos Lulav Shiva, as we said before. If the first day of Sukkot falls out on Shabbos, so we will have you take the Lulav even on Shabbos. B'Shar Kol Yamim Shisha. If let's say instead the first day of Sukkot is, let's say, on a Tuesday, of course you take the Lulav on a Tuesday, but then when you get to the 4th, 5th day of Sukkot, which turns out to be on Shabbos, you would not take the Lulav in Esrog. So the only time you take the Lulav for 7 is Dafka if it falls out on the first day, if Shabbos falls out on the first day. A Rava Shiva Ketzad, how is the Rava, the mitzvah of a Rava, which we'll discuss exactly what this mitzvah was referring to. So Yom Shvi Shel Rava Shechol Yos B'Shabbos, a Rava Shiva B'Shechol Yomim Shisha. So the mitzvah of the Rava, which is Hoshana Rabbah, that was actually the 7th day. And therefore, if Hoshana Rabbah, which is the Iker day for the Arava, was on the 7th day was on Shabbos, then it was Doicha Shabbos. Otherwise, it would not be Doicha Shabbos, and only be 6. So mitzvah's Lulav Ketzad. So exactly how did we go about the mitzvah of the Lulav? So b'Shabbos. So Yom Tov Rishon Shachar Shachlios b'Shabbos, which we said we do take the Lulav and Esrog. Malichin es Lulavei l'Har Bayis. So they would bring the Lulav to the Har Bayis. That obviously before Yom Tov, or before Shabbos. The Chazanim who were involved over there, they would be makabel, they would take the lulavim from them, the Saydonais and al-Gabe Itztaba, and they would put it all of these many thousands of lulavim on an Itztaba, on a platform. The Zakanim Anichin es Shalahen Belishcha. The Zakanim, who are more chashiv, so they used to have a special place, a special chamber, where they would put their lulavim. We used to teach people to say the following phrase: Kol mi shemegia lulav b'yadai hari hu lo b'matana. Who whatever lulav you get, consider to be like a gift, because there's a good chance you're not going to get yours. There's a chiyav of lachem, shalachem has to be yours. L'hoitzi es a shoyel. So the question is, that's only if it's mine and you take that which is mine. But if it's a matana, or if let's say a mafker, and I just give mine, everyone gives that as a gift to whoever is the first person who's makabel my lulav is a matana, so then you're makabel and therefore it's yours. Now it's Shabbos, the next day, mashkim and uboyin, they get to the Har Bayis. They would basically give people randomly the lulavim. Which is unfortunate. There were a lot of pushing and shoving which took place when it came to this part to get a lulav. Based in Sakana. Once Basin saw that this was getting a little bit out of hand, he said, you know what? Better, even though we would rather you have the lulav and esrog here, keep the lulav and esrog in your house, and you'll shake the lulav and esrog in your house, and that will be the end of it. Okay, we're going to stop here, even though I'd love to see the next piece of Gemara, but it extends. So we're going to stop at the end of that Mishnah, and let's see if we have a couple of more questions over here. Question 5. Straight Mishnah. So if the first day of Sukkot falls out on Shabbos, then it does push off Shabbos, and that's why it's shaykh that lulav could be 7 days. However, if let's say the first day of Sukkot falls on any other day, then it's not Doich Shabbos. Therefore, only be 6. Question TA 22. Me'amasai chayev is a good question. From when is a katan chayev in lulav? So it's simple when he's able to shake the lulav. Tzitz is when he can wrap himself, and tefillin when he's able to be shomer, when he's able to protect himself or guard his body, I should say. Okay, that was a softball of softballs. TB 23. So we said that the woman is allowed to take this lulav and put it back into water. Why? How are we more lenient on Yom Tov than on Shabbos? And on what are they both usher? I got this question completely wrong, which is unbelievably hard to imagine. On Yom Tov, they said you're allowed to even add water. Shabbos is not allowed to add water, but they agree that you can't be lahachlef esamayim. You can't change the water completely. That can only be done on Chol HaMoed, on Kat.